Metatron, completely hated by fans, because you did a fantastic job with it.
Right.
To be redeemed at the end.
Yeah.
All right. And
for most.
Yeah.
For most.
Yeah. And both of us were completely super excited when you joined the cast, and really sad when you exited the story. I just didn't want to get through this without saying that was a flipping fantastic job, because I remembered how much I adored seeing you in other things. And then this Metatron character was making me hate you. Well, not you, but the character.
Yeah.
That's simply a testament to how well you did it.
They did it in a way that, I mean, Supernatural is a weird animal, because when they talk about the Supernatural family, they're not kidding. It really is a family. I mean, not only within the people who were producing the show and so on, the actors and so forth, but the fandom is I talk about this in my book. They're unlike any that I've ever seen before or since. They are so committed and so devoted to it, and the people who are on it, and this mythology as it's become, that, you know, how these characters, and there are different, you know, aspects to the fandom. So you've got the, you know, the people shipping characters over here and the other people over here, and so on and so forth. But those characters, like Samantha Smiths and Jim Beavers, and, you know, those people, you know, they were in it forever, and deeply loved by these people. And although Supernatural didn't mean anything to me in particular, I didn't know the show. So for me, it was just a job. And to find that I was so hated, and I guess it was because I just thought it was kind of a funny, evil character, like an evil bad guy. I had no idea how people were affected by that, and by stuff like stealing Cass's grace and things like that. I barely knew what that meant.
Right.
But the people who hated Metatron to the end hated him because of that as much as anything. It wasn't even killing people. It was, you know, you stole Kaz's grace and I'll forgive you. Okay.
Didn't he essentially kill Dean as well?
He killed Dean. That was less, you know, I mean, they were angry about that, but he was back at the end of the episode.
Yeah, they are always back.
I know, but it was only temporary. And,
not dead yet.
you know, he came back worse than he'd left, but that wasn't my fault, I don't think. But I don't remember.
Yeah.
So for me, it was, I was operating on a different plane. But at the same time, I always knew, I know what fandom is because I've been part of fandom, which is one of the reasons I'm here. But I've been part of that, and I, not with Supernatural, but with other things. So with Supernatural, once I got a handle on it, the first three, I think the only three in this country, Supernatural cons I went to, were while I was doing the show, but before I had become redeemed. So when I showed up on stage, the guys and everybody, you know, we're all up doing panels and so forth. They just hated it. I mean, it was like, because at that point, then within a few weeks, they saw the, Don't Call Me Shirley, the episode with Rob.
Right.
And suddenly, and then in the following week, they killed me off, and everybody's going, "Oh, bring him back, bring him back." I'm going, too late. Could have used a little support when I was here, but it's too late now. So it was funny, a unique experience, and one that, I mean, that just all of them, all of those episodes, they had me in for 15 or 16 episodes. Every one of them was wonderful and worthwhile and challenging in a way that
Nice.
I usually don't get challenged.
Mm.
And working with those guys was so wonderful. They had great directors, great writers. It was, for an actor, it was one of the top experiences you can have working on something like that.
That's so nice to hear.
And then after I was gone, they also, forgave me for the most part.
Well,
Yeah.
you were already in our good graces just from other things we'd watched. So it was cool
Absolutely.
to see you actually be on the show. And, despite what happens in the story, we can always separate.
Well, yeah,
fantasy
I mean,
from
but
reality.
that's
Yeah.
the thing when I was talking about the generational differences when it comes to people who know who I am.
Mhm.
A lot of these people didn't have any idea who I was.
True.
I mean, it's not Supernatural fans don't automatically know Better Off Dead and Revenge of the Nerds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was my girlfriend's daughter who got me watching Supernatural. I managed to walk into the living room, and it was the Crossroads episode, one of the early season ones. And what's this? This is pretty cool. And that was the end of that. So I bonded with my girlfriend's daughter that night, and which is nice because we just kind of started up. But Supernatural became part of my curriculum as well. And it was exciting to see you jump on that show. And I've already written my first letter to Creation saying, hey, how come this guy isn't in your conventions? So the letter campaign has started.
Good luck on that.
Well, I'm just one person, but maybe we can get some more going.
Yeah.
Ben, let's see. I think we've kind of gone through the.
Oh, by the way, I have to tell you, on that, I was just at a Supernatural convention in Pittsburgh. It wasn't actually a Supernatural convention, one of the Creation ones. It was a smaller one, which was being held. And so I was there with Jim Beaver and Misha and a bunch of the cast. We were all there. We all had dinner together one night. It was great. I mean, it was
wonderful.
That sounds delightful.
It was much smaller.
Right.
Thing.
So kind of like a one-off, or is it just a smaller?
No, it's
not Creation.
Annual, I think it's twice a year, but it's just not. It's not devoted to Supernatural. It's more general. But the Supernatural element in this one was pretty strong. So
that's excellent.
It was kind of like being back in the fold.
Excellent.
Okay.
Let's see here, Ben. Let's talk about some Sherlock Holmes here. Why don't you?
Some Sherlock Holmes.
Since initially that's what I approached you about here. Obviously, we're curious, and we want to know about you and your film career. That's it's always a nice bonus to having you on here. But you've got a lot of knowledge about Sherlock Holmes, and take it away, Ben.
Yeah. So clearly, we learned about how much you like Sherlock Holmes from your book, Revenge of the Nerd. Can you tell us a little about your history with Sherlock Holmes? How many organizations are there, and and are you a part of more than one of them, and to what degree?
Well, I have been part of them since high school. My first Sherlock Holmes group was called the Trifling Monographs, and it was in the suburbs of Detroit, and it was started by a wonderful woman, teacher, named Susan Rice, and she did it as a way of introducing kids into the Sherlock Holmes world. And I found out about it. The kids who were part of Trifling Monographs were all her students, and I was not one of her students. She wasn't a teacher of mine, so I found out about it from the Baker Street Journal, which is the standard Sherlock Holmes journal, a quarterly, which you can subscribe to, which is all scholarly articles on Sherlock Holmes and Baker Street in his time. It's been around since the Baker Street Irregulars since 1934. And it was originally started by a group of writers in New York and Chicago, Vincent Sterrett in Chicago, Christopher Morley in New York, a bunch of others. And that became a sort of loosely based group. It was mainly a bunch of guys, stag, no women allowed, who would get together and drink and talk about Sherlock Holmes. And over time, it became more of an organization. And Susan was teaching us not just about Sherlock Holmes, but again, about the concept of community, of being with like-minded people about something that was sharing something important to them.
Nice.
Star Trek was on at the time, the original. And this is 1969, probably, I'm talking.
Okay.
So, there were loads of things that people were sort of loving and obsessing about in their basements and in their garages with friends. They would, with these different Batman or Star Trek or any of those.
Yeah.
Sherlock Holmes was a little less common and a little less accessible because there are 60 stories. It's the Conan Doyle, the original canon, just 60, 4 novels, and the rest are short stories. At the time, there had been TV shows, and of course, the Basil Rathbone, Nigel Bruce films, which is mainly how people knew Sherlock Holmes, was through those 2 actors, the Universal films. And so I wrote a letter to Susan, who just passed away, actually. We have been mourning her at the Baker Street Irregulars over the last year or so. And she remained a good friend to all of us. I mean, she was not just a friend of mine, and I was not the only person she opened the door of this sort of magical place to. She sort of did that even long after she stopped being a teacher. She was still introducing people. And she's wonderful. She was just a wonderful person. So she started it. So by the time I graduated high school, that had been sort of the end of my connection with organized Sherlockian groups. And I did not become a member of the Baker Street Irregulars until the 90s.
Oh, wow.
Because at that time, I mean, I had no access to it. It was, she was there, where they had finally allowed women in. I mean, shocking. She, of all people in the world, should have been, and she was, in fact, in the first group of women who were inducted into the Baker Street Irregulars. After that was when I wound up doing it, probably because of her influence with the people at top. But the whole thing about the Baker Street Irregulars is no one is supposed to know how you get invited to become a member. It's secret. So, and which is, I mean, technically true. You don't know. You can't just show up. You can't write anyone and say, could I become a member of the Baker Street? Where do I, send a check? I want to, become a member of the Baker Street. It doesn't work that way. You suddenly get a letter asking for your appearance in New York in January for these events. Wow. And if you show up and you either get invested or you don't. Maybe it takes a few years. It's all very mysterious. Wow. But that happened with me. I became a member. Some of my closest friends are members of the Baker Street Irregulars. And being a part of that organization just made me more interested in the Holmes stories and being involved in Sherlockian things, films and TV and all. I mean, it just makes it even more fun when you're doing it with other people.
3, 2, 1, yeah!